The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is by no means a narratively sound movie. There's a lot of problems with this film, from its messy story, how it handles Electro, and continuing a rather disinteresting, while comic accurate, subplot about Peter Parker's parents. This movie isn't perfect, but none of these films are either, as much as people like to say. But that's okay, it doesn't need to be perfect. That being said, I've recently binged the Spider-Man films, including Venom, and my opinions on these films have changed. I still love Spider-Man 3, I still think Spider-Man 1 is the best film in the Raimi trilogy, and I still believe Spider-Man 2 gets a little more credit than it deserves. In the same breath, I still love Far From Home, and I still think Homecoming is a solid film. When talking about Mark Webb's duology, I think the second film is better than the former. And if you were to ask me my thoughts on Venom, I think both of those films are okay, although I do enjoy the first film slightly better than I did the second one. Not terrible, but not amazing either, and that's just okay. I had a good time. My thoughts on comic book movies as a whole has changed. Good or bad, these films remind me of comic books. They're often silly, sometimes convoluted, and don't make a lot of sense. Sometimes they try to juggle a lot of things and they're jam-packed with silly one-liners and jokes left and right, just like comic books. Now, I know there's darker comics in the industry that handle much darker subject matter, from Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, The Killing Joke, Civil War, World Hulk, and so much more. But I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about those campy, silly stories that at its core had a message to tell. Its characters full of life and able to crack jokes at even the most dire situations. But this isn't what this video is about, and I'm sorry if I'm rambling. What I'm trying to say is, I love all these films. Some I like more than others, but I think all of these films have something that just works for them. They have something about them that makes us fans of the character enjoy. Okay, so let me stop beating around the bush. I love The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Upon my rewatch, this has become one of my favorite Spider-Man films of all time. Despite its issues, I love everything about this film, besides the parent subplot. I love Andrew Garfield in this film. He's such a perfect fit to play both Peter Parker and Spider-Man. He brings that freshly graduated Peter Parker just entering college to life. In my opinion, he does a much better job here than what he did in the first film. The same goes for Emma Stone. This is Gwen Stacy. This is Peter Parker's first love. She's such a breath of fresh air compared to Dunst's Mary Jane. No disrespect to Dunst, she's a phenomenal actress, but Raimi just handled it poorly. I already touched upon that in my last video, so I won't iterate here. Please go check it out. But Webb is similar to how Raimi understands these characters. Well, besides Electro. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 has heart. It's a good film at its core. Trapped by a studio hungry to start a universe it has no business starting at this point in time. The tragic relationship between Peter and Gwen, the fractured friendship with Harry, these three plots should have been the film's central focus. DeHaan does a phenomenal job as Harry Osborn, but sadly, we don't get much of him. Every time he and Peter were on screen, I could feel the chemistry between the two. I honestly believe if this film focused on Harry and Peter's friendship and his de-evolution to the Goblin, along with Peter fighting the guilt of dating Gwen, it would have been a very human and fantastic film. And I feel like this is what Webb was going for here. Speaking of guilt, the scenes where Peter would see Captain Stacy was such an amazing visual touch that really communicated Peter's anxiety, fear, and guilt to us, the audience. When I watched this movie again, I had the same reaction when Gwen died. I was anxious, I was scared, and I was sad, just like Peter Parker. And that's a testament to how brilliant Mark Webb is and could have been if he had this movie all to himself. This has to be the most visually appealing Spider-Man movie to date. Keep in mind, I'm writing this before seeing No Way Home. By the time this is uploaded, I'd have already seen the film, and perhaps that opinion is going to change, and I'll save that for another video. But until then, let's continue. No Spider-Man film before or after has been able to replicate how beautiful this movie looks in terms of cinematography and visual effects. The fantastic intro where Peter free falls into a spectacular web singing sequence. The motion of his movements are amazing. As to be expected, every Spider-Man film has the web swinging down pat, but this just takes the cake. Due to how it's shot, the varying angles, the first-person shots that were prevalent in the first film make its way back here and are better than ever before and more frequent. A welcome addition that I wouldn't mind seeing adapted in the MCU's take on Spider-Man later in the future. Every battle between Electro and Spider-Man was also breathtaking. Pulling from the Ultimate Comics for Electro's design was a great choice, and I'm sure these scenes were inspiration for that choice. The blues just work so well here. I've been in love with this fight, despite Electro being a letdown and me not liking the Ultimate design. What can I say? I'm a fan of the classics. I still enjoyed all the visual imagery. Speaking of the classics, I love the suit design here, and I'm inclined to agree. This is the best Spider-Man suit put to screen so far. The wide eyes, the deep reds, the dark blues, the way it glimmers when the light hits it just right. This is the definitive live-action Spider-Man costume. I've talked about the colors a few times in this video already. The blues of the final fight with Electro, the colors of Spider-Man's suit, and that leads me to my bigger point. The colors of this film, so bright, so vibrant, very comic booky, for a lack of a better term. I'm a guy that loves deep colors in his films. I can't get down with the blue filter slapped on Venom, and I was never a fan of it in Zack Snyder's multiple DCEU directed outings. And I never liked the dark, saturated color palettes either. They've always been boring to me and really bring down on my overall enjoyment of a film or TV show I'm watching. It's a big reason why I'm not a fan of Mark Webb's first outing with the Webhead. I don't like this realistic take on a wall crawler. The colors in this film are just flat and boring to me. In fact, overall in my rewatch, I did find the first film just boring. I didn't care for Dr. Connors, and I didn't think Peter and Gwen are as good as they are here, and I never liked Peter Parker's skateboarding. Not because I think it's cool, quite the opposite. I firmly believe Peter Parker is a cool character, but it feels like some executives sat down around a table and said, "What do kids like these days? Skateboarding, right? Then let's have Peter Parker skateboard." But hey, this isn't a video about critiquing the Amazing Spider-Man, but I do love the suit. The soundtrack for this film is also amazing. I think all three of these series have a great main theme for Spider-Man, and I can't pick a favorite, but if I was forced to, Hans Zimmer's interpretation of Spider-Man is what I'm going to go with. This film could have been amazing, but sadly, it isn't. And that's okay. It doesn't need to be. I love The Amazing Spider-Man 2, flaws and all, and I love Andrew Garfield. And I don't think any of these films deserve the hate they get. I hope someday Sony and Webb will revisit this world and give us fans The Amazing Spider-Man 3. And I also hope the same for Maguire and Spider-Man 4. That being said, this is Grimtoki. This has been Beyond Animation, and I'll see you in the next one. Excelsior.